President. I just returned from a mission to the Middle East, where I had the unique opportunity to lead a bipartisan delegation to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Jordan, and Israel. We had planned this visit long before the heinous attacks by Iran-backed Hamas, with the goal of strengthening the Abraham Accords and our relationships in the region. In the UAE, I led a discussion with their Crown Prince and President about increasing cooperation between our two countries to further security, peace, and prosperity. I left feeling more determined than ever to intensify our efforts to advance growth across the Middle East and beyond. In Saudi Arabia, I met with Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince and Prime Minister of the Kingdom. During this visit, we discussed the prospect of an Israeli-Saudi peace deal to further the dream of a thriving and integrated Middle East. The delegation left that very meeting optimistic that the Crown Prince was dedicated and committed to this dream, a dream for many of us, like myself, who served in the region after 9/11, a dream that was rocked the next morning when we heard the news that Israel was at war once again. At this moment, there was no question what my bipartisan delegation needed to do. It was our job to ensure our ally Israel understood clearly that America is and will always stand shoulder to shoulder with her. Our delegation was briefed at the highest levels as we completed our visit in Saudi at the Prince Sultan Air Base, where we witnessed integrated air and missile defense systems in action, something my Bipartisan Defend Act helped ensure. We continued into Bahrain the next morning to meet with the Crown Prince and Prime Minister. And once again, a meeting that was intended to be another step on the path to regional security took a very different turn. The Crown Prince provided his insight into the current situation in Israel and his assessment of the causes and potential scale of the conflict. He also spoke of a peaceful future and highlighted the long-standing relations between Bahrain and America, noting the history of bilateral ties and his commitment to achieving mutual aspirations. Our final stops in Bahrain included the U.S. Naval Support Activity and Task Force 59, which integrates unmanned systems and artificial intelligence to help ensure maritime security and to deter Iran's illegal activities in the Gulf. The situation in Israel continued to degrade, and I made the decision that we were ultimately going to accomplish what we set out to achieve. Despite all attempts to stop us, I led our bipartisan delegation to Jordan in preparation for a cross-border drive into Israel. Upon our previously unscheduled arrival, we met with His Majesty King Abdullah II of Jordan, where he painted a dire picture of regional escalation and the need for stability in the West Bank. He was open and honest about his concern that Iran would capitalize on the chaos by using their other proxies to further escalate the conflict. He discussed the tensions within Jordan and the need for the U.S. to once again lead and establish peace through strength. The king's clear-eyed insight into the savage nature of Iran-backed Hamas was chilling, and his concern for escalation was felt by every member of our delegation. It was clear that what we were about to walk into was chaotic and uncertain, and not for the faint of heart. But in unity, our bipartisan delegation pressed on, and on October 10th, we set foot in Israel. We first met with Eli Cohen, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and received an update on the war. Here we heard for the first time the true nature of the atrocities that the Hamas savages were conducting: rape, beheadings, dragging bloody bodies into the streets. And among those dead were American citizens. The Israeli foreign minister made it very clear that the threat Hamas poses to civilization is no less than what the U.S. faced with ISIS in Iraq, where I served, and in Syria. And I couldn't agree more. These terrorists are monsters, and they deserve nothing short of destruction. We then spoke with the family of Chaim Perry, an 80-year-old peace activist and father of 5, who was kidnapped from his home during the invasion. We heard firsthand accounts of the inhumanity of the attack, the destruction of their home, the violence his family endured, and ultimately that one of his sons was murdered defending the family. Shaken but not deterred, the delegation carried on to Tel Aviv, where we met with opposition leader Lapid, the Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer, and ultimately Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. We heard increasingly graphic accounts of torture and mutilation of civilians. And we ultimately witnessed a nation that was and is truly in an existential fight for survival against a psychopathic terrorist organization whose stated goal is destruction of the state of Israel and killing as many Jewish people as possible. Madam President, let me tell you, there was no daylight between the political factions in Israel on what needs to be done. The complete and total destruction of Hamas is the greatest near-term priority for Israel. Reestablishing deterrence against all others who seek the destruction of Israel is critical. I am here to say that in these goals, the U.S. must not waver in our commitment to our greatest ally in the Middle East. Now is not the time for weak-kneed leadership and ongoing appeasement of the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism that risks the lives of Americans and our allies at home and abroad, and allowed Hamas to wreak havoc in Israel. Now is the time for strong American leadership, one that understands the threat of war waged by Iran-backed proxies is to our own national security here in the homeland. With Americans still being held hostage by Hamas and the death toll of our fellow citizens continuing to rise, this moment demands clarity from our elected officials. Not only today, but in the coming days and months as Israel fights to secure their most basic human right, the right to life, the United States must stand resolute in our support. May God bless the families who have lost a loved one. And may God bless Israel as she defends herself from Hamas's brutal attacks. I yield the floor, Madam President.